Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, I am super excited because we have an amazing guest on this show. This man I'm about to introduce to you has blown my mind because he has so many fascinating stories and examples of the miracles that he has facilitated through spiritual hypnosis. His enthusiasm is absolutely contagious. He is highly praised worldwide. He is the author of 3 books which have received raving reviews. His work has received countless professional awards, and he has been awarded an honorary doctorate in clinical hypnotherapy for lifetime achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to have Roy Hunter on this show today. Thank you, Roy, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us.
You're welcome. It's an honor.
So, what prompted you to become a hypnotherapist?
It's a long story, but one of the major instigators was what happened after suffering a permanent back injury in 1981. At that time, I was working for Litton Industries, and 2 of us were loading a very heavy office computer out of a van to deliver it to a business. Back then, computers were quite heavy and a little bit too heavy for one person to lift by himself. Unfortunately, the person on the other end lost his grip and started to drop the computer. I dove to save the computer and injured my back in the process. Unfortunately, the injury fractured a disc in my lower back, and I ended up at Tacoma General Hospital facing back surgery to remove a fractured disc fragment that was sticking into my spinal cord that had already cost over 50% paralysis, and lost most of my feeling in one leg and about half of the feeling in the other leg. So I had a horrible prognosis given to me that I would be totally bedridden for 2 or 3 months, would not be able to work for 6 to 9 months, and would never be able to lift over 25 pounds again the rest of my life. I was also told that I would be in chronic back pain for life. That was very scary. So I knew that my days with Litton Industries were numbered after that, of course.
And how did you, after this series of events, get exposed to or learned about hypnosis? Like, was it a person? Was there like an event that turned the switch on for you?
There was an earlier event that got me interested in hypnosis as a client because I had experienced a session for stress management and also a past life regression. So I learned self-hypnosis and also read a book about silver mind control. So while I was lying in the hospital the day before the scheduled surgery, I was doing some prayer and meditation and self-hypnosis. And then while being wheeled that same afternoon into the lab for final x-rays before the procedure, because back then they didn't have laser surgery, I was facing invasive surgery, I felt a sudden return of all the feeling in both my legs. And up until then, my legs were so numb that I didn't even have a reflex. The doctor, my doctor, had put that rubber mallet on both of my knees, 0 reflex action on either leg. So then after the x-rays, when I got back into the room, I was able to get out of the wheelchair without assistance and get back into bed, although my back still hurt. But I had total feeling in both legs. Then the doctors came in the next morning, both my doctor and the surgeon, and he said, "We have no medical explanation for what happened." He said it is as though, and then he broke his comment saying, "Do you ever watch Star Trek?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I've seen all of the episodes several times as reruns because that was before Star Trek Next Generation came out." And he said, "It's as though Scotty teleported your disc fragment out of you. It's absorbed, it's gone. We have no medical or scientific explanation for what happened, but the bottom line is you will not need surgery because it's as though you had an angel do surgery on you during the night."
This is
And
amazing. And was this the first, since the topic today is about miracles, was this the first miracle that you
well,
experienced?
for me, that was a miracle of the mind. I mean, he said they had no medical explanation for what happened. He said the disc fragment that was sticking into your spinal cord is gone. It's been absorbed. He said, however, you have a disintegrated disc in your lower back, and you will never again be able to lift over 25 pounds. And he said, you'll be on daily pain meds for the rest of your life to deal with chronic back pain. That still was serious, but at least I didn't have to face the prognosis of being bedridden for several months before being able to walk and have to learn to walk all over again. So that was a major improvement. Self-hypnosis helped me tame the pain so that even though I couldn't lift anything heavy and still can't to this day, I was able to live a normal life without the daily pain meds. So that really motivated me to realize the subconscious is very powerful. So then a few months later, my ex-wife and I went to a workshop by Dick Sutphin on past life regressions when he did group past life regressions in Seattle. And that's when I learned about Charles Tebbetts, who was a hypnosis instructor with a school in Edmonds. So I commuted once a week for quite a number of months from South Tacoma to Edmonds, which was about 45 miles, a good hour and a half to 2 hours going to the school during rush hour, and then a little over an hour's drive on the return when traffic was light. But I got very interested, did not realize at the time that my hypnosis instructor would someday be considered a 20th century legend in hypnotherapy. But he had a very comprehensive hypnosis school, and he taught a client-centered approach that you have to learn a number of different techniques because scripts help some of the people some of the time, but they don't help all the people all the time. And you need to know more than just a hypnotic induction and have a good script in order to have a good success rate. So I had a very good start, and my instructor reminded me somewhat of my grandfather. He was tall and skinny, just like my grandfather, and though he didn't look like him, I almost felt like Charlie became family. He wanted to be called Charlie rather than Mr. Tebbetts. He was a pioneer of parts therapy, which is the best technique available for helping clients resolve inner conflicts. There are a number of techniques that are similar to parts therapy, like I have an inner child, I have an inner adult, an inner parent, an inner grandparent. So we have various parts. So sometimes, for example, a person seeing me for smoking cessation doesn't respond to the positive suggestions. Then oftentimes the inner conflict resolution, whether you use parts therapy or ego state therapy, there are other techniques that are similar. It's based on the concept of helping the part that wants to keep on smoking and rejects the positive suggestions to come to terms of agreement with the part that wants to overcome the presenting problem. So Charlie, before he passed away, asked me to continue his work. So in a sense, I had no plans of ever becoming a teacher of hypnotherapy when I entered the profession back in 1983. Charles Tebbetts persuaded me to teach and to continue his work prior to his passing. So that's kind of a long introduction of how I got involved in hypnotherapy. But I tell you, when I can live a normal life instead of suffering excruciating back pain every day and having to take meds every day, that really made a believer out of me in the power of the subconscious. That doesn't mean I don't have the injury. I deal with chronic pain every day, but instead of being a 7 or an 8 on that 0 to 10 pain scale, it's usually a 2 or a 3, sometimes a 4 or a 5, and occasionally I can go a whole day without ever noticing any pain. That doesn't happen as often now as it did when I was younger, but as I'm sitting talking right now, I feel 0 on that 0 to 10 pain scale. But when I'm doing physical activities, I might feel a 2 or a 3. I loved tennis and racquetball prior to the injury. But the first time I picked up a tennis racket, several months after the injury, I knew I was putting my tennis racket down for the last time in this life. That was painful emotionally, but it is what it is. I'm just happy to be able to live a normal life in spite of having a disintegrated disc in my lower back.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And something that caught my attention, Roy, was when you said that you will not teach hypnosis, and yet here you are, an icon, a legend. So what made that switch?
That in itself is an amazing story because my bachelor's degree is in theology, so I had pretty much a Christian upbringing. And when Charlie first asked me to teach his course, I said, Charlie, I've only been in the profession 4 years. I'm not qualified to teach. He said, Hunter, I know a good teacher when I see one. He said, don't say no. He said, you don't have to say yes. Just tell me you'll think about it. And then let me know in a few weeks. So I did something that I was taught not to do decades ago. You don't dare God to do something. You don't test God. So I did what I was taught not to do, and I said, okay, God, if I'm supposed to teach hypnosis, then make it possible for me to convince Tacoma Community College to let me teach a certification course at the college. I had not heard of anyone teaching a professional hypnosis course in a college anywhere in the country in 1983. I'm not certain as to whether there were any courses on a full hypnosis certification taught at any college, but several people have told me decades ago that I was the first. What happened was I was teaching an adult self-hypnosis class for managing stress and also controlling weight through the adult continuing education department, where I would do maybe 2 or 3 nights spread out over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And then I had like the final class of stress management session scheduled the following week. And the department chair said, can I buy you dinner? I run an idea by you. I thought maybe she was going to ask me to teach another adult continuing education class on some other common project, or schedule another smoking cessation class. But instead, after our salad is served, she says, have you ever considered teaching a full hypnosis certification course at the college? So I had chickened out because I didn't think that I should ask them. And then she turns around and asks me. So I felt that was the answer to my prayer, and I needed to tell Charlie, yes, I'll teach your course at the college. So that happened in 1987. So in the fall of 1987, I taught my first 9-month hypnosis certification course at the college. Back then it was 150 hours. And so began my teaching career in hypnotherapy. Then when Charlie passed on in 1992, I felt that his textbook, Miracles on Demand, needed to be reorganized into a logical learning sequence. So I wrote The Art of Hypnosis and The Art of Hypnotherapy. The Art of Hypnosis was the first 3 months. The Art of Hypnotherapy represented months 4 through 9 of his approach, which is based on fitting the technique to the client instead of fitting the clients to your technique or program of coordinated sessions.
This is really amazing, Roy. And you mentioned that you had started teaching. Was this 1987, you said?
1987.
1987. Have you been teaching since?
Yes, I did stop teaching my full 9-month course at the end of the first decade of this century after my wife became totally disabled, because I do a lot of caregiving for my wife. You can't say you love somebody if you only love that person when they're healthy. Mm-hmm. So I still do sessions and I still teach workshops, but I no longer teach my full 9-month course, which is now expanded into a full year course, although there are several others around the world in a few locations who teach my full course, and they pay me a small percentage for the right to use copyrighted material, which is tried and proven and has passed the test of time. And there are a number of hypnosis schools that either require or recommend that people read The Art of Hypnosis or The Art of Hypnotherapy. I also have other books I've written. For example, since Charles Tebbets was also known as a pioneer of parts therapy, for quite a few years people kept asking me for a good book on parts therapy. Finally, in 2005, Crown House Publishing approached me and asked me if I'd ever considered Crown House as publisher for my books. So my first book for Crown House was Hypnosis for Inner Conflict Resolution, Introducing Parts Therapy. And they published that in 2005. And then eventually they took over The Art of Hypnosis, which is in its 3rd edition, and The Art of Hypnotherapy, which is in its 4th edition. And then Bruce Eimer and I co-authored The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy. They published that in 2012. Bruce, or I should say Dr. Eimer, is a licensed clinical psychologist, and at the time he was a fellow of ASCH. He's also a fellow of the American Psychological Association. And when the two of us co-authored The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy, a clinical guide, it built a bridge of credibility between hypnotherapy and psychology. So be careful what you ask for, you might get it, because back in the mid-'80s, I asked God if someone someday could build a bridge between hypnotherapy and psychology, because back in the 80s, I was looked at somewhat scornfully by quite a few psychologists, not all. There was a psychologist who took Charlie's course, and he was a great source of referrals for me, and vice versa, because if I was working with somebody, for example, for say weight loss, and parts therapy revealed that the cause of his inability to get rid of excess weight was because of an unresolved marriage issue, well, you can't release somebody from the core cause if the cause is somebody else. So I always had a supply of business cards from a psychologist in Tacoma who specialized in marriage counseling. And I gave out a number of those cards. I was always quick, still am, to refer if appropriate, because I do not consider hypnotherapy as alternative. I consider us as complementary. And I'm very quick to refer if I feel somebody else is better able to help my client. And I have felt that way ever since I got certified by Charlie back in 1983. And I know that more than one psychologist and physician who've taken my parts therapy training workshops over the years, and occasionally regression therapy training, have mentioned that they respect hypnotherapists who take that approach. I have a personal concern about any hypnotherapist who feels that he or she should accept everyone who darkens their office door. In fact, I've given away a lot of free 30-minute consultations over the years on the basis of I want to make sure that my client and I are a right fit for each other. And one time I referred a lady not because I wasn't qualified to help her, but because she revealed during the first 30 minutes that her father taught her not to trust anyone with a beard. But she had done her research and she knew that I had trained a lot of competent hypnotherapists. And I told her, I said, in all honesty, your own emotional comfort is a very important part of your success. I said, yes, I'm more than qualified to help you, but it might take several sessions because of your mistrust of beards. I said, I can refer you to one of my former hypnotherapy students who doesn't have a beard, or one of my female hypnotherapy students, and you could probably accomplish your goal in only 2 or 3 sessions. She thanked me, and I didn't charge her for the session. Was I qualified to help? Yes, but I believe in doing what's best for the client rather than what's best for my pocketbook. In other words, do for the client what you would want done if the roles were reversed. That's been my number one ethic in all my years of practice.
That's really amazing. And I can see how you could have overwritten her belief, because she had this belief that she's not to trust people with a beard. And I imagine you had a beard back then, so that was a conflict in her mind. So
Yes, I still do have a beard. My wife loves it, so.
I have seen you, so I know you do, but back then I wasn't sure if that was the case. So I appreciate you being so transparent about this, and I also appreciate being so client-centered. And I realize that every journey is unique. And what I'd like to ask for our listeners is, like, what types of problems or challenges do you focus on, and are you able to help people overcome?
That's an outstanding question, and I think a question that everyone considering hypnotherapy should ask himself or herself. For quite a few years, I considered the so-called bread and butter to be smoking cessation and habit control. Habit control primarily being weight management, but sometimes other habits, like I've seen a number of people who started chewing gum habitually after quitting smoking. And gum chewing isn't nearly as common as overeating and smoking. But the majority of my income throughout the 1980s, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of it, came from either smoking cessation or weight management. But other common problems, not as common as those two, have been stress management, fears and anxieties such as fear of flying. I've helped quite a number of clients overcome fear of flying during my years of practice. I've also specialized in sales motivation. And with physician's referral, I've seen a number of clients through the years for pain management. And also specialized, working part-time for 7 years for Franciscan Hospice, doing pain management hypnosis for terminal patients. I had pre-approval when I represented the hospice without getting a physician's referral. But a caution to any hypnosis professional listening to this: you do not want to do pain management for a client unless he or she has had the cause of the pain diagnosed. And that's for your client's protection as well as your professional protection, because there is an invisible line of unlicensed practice of medicine that I will not knowingly cross. But I'll always remember my very first client for pain management. She came in asking specifically for hypnosis to reduce her back pain. And then I did my medical disclosure and told her I would require written permission from her physician, which would either be on an RX pad or on a letter. She came back a week later with a letter saying it's okay to use hypnosis to manage her pain because she had suffered a back injury from a traffic accident. And within 4 sessions, I taught her enough pain management techniques that I learned from Charlie when I took his class to help her reduce the quantity of pain medication that she needed by 50%. So it took her only 2 months to more than pay for the cost of her sessions by reducing the cost of the pain meds that she was on. She had apparently suffered not a crippling, but a very serious and painful back injury from an auto accident.
I see.
And that was my first of what has turned out through the years to be hundreds of sessions involving pain management. And in fact, Bruce Eimer, the psychologist I told you that co-authored the regression text with me, we felt so good about authoring the first book that he convinced me to co-author a second book with him, which was released just within the last 2 weeks.
What's the title of the book, Roy?
Taming Chronic Pain, a mindful approach for bringing pain relief. He worked as a pain psychologist until some months back when he retired. Now he's full-time psychologist and hypnotherapist living in Florida. And we worked off and on for about 3 years on this pain book because not only does he have professional experience as a pain psychologist using hypnosis on patients at a major hospital in the Philadelphia area prior to moving to Florida. But he and I have something else in common that we both wish we didn't have in common. He, like me, suffered a permanent back injury. So we have both literally had to walk our talk on pain management. And he convinced me to co-author the book with him because of the good experience we had co-authoring the regression text, which is highly praised by both psychology profession and hypnotherapy profession around the globe. And what we have in this Taming Chronic Pain are mindfulness exercises that you can use to help deal with pain, because there are millions of people who suffer chronic pain and they try to kill the pain with medication or try to ignore the pain. I live with the pain. You know, pain's a warning something's wrong with the body and the cause needs to be diagnosed, but chronic pain oftentimes is more intense than it needs to be. And I would far rather have the pain mildly be there to warn me by getting more severe if I overdo it and endanger my back, because if I ignored the pain totally and used hypnosis to totally shut the pain down, I could cause further injury to my back, because I can tame the pain, but my back will never be whole. At least that would be a major miracle if the disc grew back in my lower back. Since that's not happening, my other alternative is to make sure that I don't strain my back and cause further injury. So the pain is there and I don't want to kill it, but I'd like to keep it tame rather than let it get wildly painful. Like on a few occasions I've overdone it physically and my back pain has jumped up to an 8 or a 9. And for one thing, my wife and I are avid Star Trekkies. You might wonder, why would I mention Star Trek in my talk? Well, I had a chance years ago when I was talking to Leonard Maltin at Paramount Studio. He offered to take my sister and me to the Star Trek site at Paramount Studios. Ordinarily, I would have jumped at that chance, but that was one of the times when my back was at a 9 and I could barely walk. And I almost canceled the appointment that we had with Leonard Maltin. He was a film critic. That's a long story. I won't go into it, but my grandfather was an executive at Paramount back in the 1930s and early 40s. So that's how I was able to get into a private screening room at Paramount. That's been over 2 decades ago, but it was obviously after the back injury. So living about a 2 or 3 is so much more comfortable than having my pain constantly be a 6 or a 7 like it could have been and like I was told that it would be. And I remember about 25 years ago suffering a minor injury and having an x-ray. And when the doctor read the x-ray, he said, what kind of pain meds are you on? I said, what do you mean, what kind of pain meds am I on? I don't take any pain meds. He said, well, these x-rays show a back injury. He said, I don't see how you can be walking straight without taking a pretty strong pain med. And I told him, well, I use hypnosis and self-hypnosis to manage my pain. Thank you very much. He couldn't believe it. So, but apparently the x-ray looks better now than it did 20 years ago, because I suffered a injury a year ago, overdoing it on the caregiving, and had to have my back x-rayed again. And looked better than it did 20 years ago. So I must be doing something right. So I think that means that some of these techniques that Bruce and I have been practicing and teaching work. So I'm excited about my new book, as you can tell, or our new book. I wouldn't have co-authored it if Bruce hadn't have persuaded me to, but he can be pretty persuasive at times. He's a good friend and a true professional, and he, like me, strongly believes in client-centered hypnotherapy, and he practices patient-centered psychology. So I have a lot of respect for him personally as well as professionally.
That's really awesome. I also really admire the statement that you had made to be mindful about the approach, because you could have numbed the pain, you could have used hypnosis to reduce the pain,
Yes.
but you made the statement, and I've been teaching for many years, and it's totally aligned with my teachings as well, where you said, don't numb the pain, don't remove the pain until you understand the root cause of it. I
Oh,
love
that is absolutely essential. In fact, I won't accept a client for pain management without that client letting me know that he or she has had a professional who is licensed and trained to diagnose, give them the cause, and give permission for the hypnosis treatment.
Yeah, I really love your approach, and it's completely aligned with my belief as well. And while you were
Thank you.
describing the book, and even your own life and your own transformation, you mentioned a few miracles. And I know that you have witnessed several miracles. When you and I spoke on the phone a week or two ago, you mentioned some of these miracles. Can you give the listeners a couple of your mind-blowing examples or experiences, please?
I would be happy to. The first one was what I already mentioned, the fact that I was given a horrible prognosis, and that was my own miracle of the mind. Charles Tebbets titled his book, Miracles on Demand. And I wrote a whole chapter section, I mean a whole chapter in the Art of Hypnotherapy based on one of his miracles, where he had a student in his class that had epilepsy. And the student wanted to know if parts therapy could help him overcome epilepsy. I won't go into the details of that, but the bottom line was it took one parts therapy session and the seizures stopped. What this hypnotherapy student did not know is that the cause of his continuing seizures was the fact that he drank too much. So neither he nor Charlie realized that his drinking problem was the cause of the ongoing seizures. So I was fortunate to get a video of that and showed that video in my class for several years. And then in the early 90s, Scott Lamb, that was the man's real name, who gave me written permission to include a transcript of the session in the Art of Hypnotherapy, came to my class and was available to answer questions after the student saw his amazing session with Charles Tebbets. And then he said, I've had neither a drink nor a seizure since that session with Charlie several years ago. And he said, also notice I had a beer belly in that video. And then he patted his belly and he said, there are other uses of hypnosis as well, because he looked quite a few pounds lighter than he did in the original video. That inspired me. And then I combined that with something that happened in the mid-'80s. A lady saw me for weight loss, and she had an inner conflict. There was a part of her that did not want her to get rid of the excess weight. And she came in for her third session, no weight reduction whatsoever. She said, I don't know what's going on. She said, I love your approach. The suggestions are good. I have no problem with the suggestions. She said, however, the lady had a part of her that would not allow her to respond to the positive hypnotic suggestions to make wise choices in her health and eating habits. And when I attempted parts therapy, that part would not negotiate. That part of her, which was like her inner child part, refused to accept any negotiations or make any compromises with the adult part of her that wanted to be at her ideal weight. So then I literally got stuck in a session. So I used my own inner peace trigger, which is touching my thumb to my middle finger and taking a deep breath. And I told her, take a deep breath and go way down. And while I'm doing that, I am mentally in my mind asking God for some intuitive guidance. And then I suddenly flashed on the fact that during the intake session, she said she was very actively involved in her church. So on pure intuition, I said, there's a part of you that's most closely connected to your perception of God or Christ or Holy Spirit. And for your highest and best good, I invite that part to come forward. And when that part's willing to communicate, please say the words, I am here. And then in a goddess-like voice, I am here. And I said, thank you. What name or title shall I call you? And the response was, Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit resolved her inner conflict within 5 minutes and told the other two parts what agreements to make. And her pounds started peeling off. So that's how I discovered spiritual hypnosis. And then, although I didn't mention it in the college classroom because I wanted to keep my class secular, people with increasing frequency started coming to me as a result of referrals for spiritual hypnosis. I kept it out of the class. I didn't feel it belonged in the classroom until Pam Winkler, who was a psychologist, said, Roy, you need to bring this out of the closet. And that was in 1997. It took me 2 years to bring it out of the closet. In 1999, I brought it out of the closet when I taught a 2-day parts therapy workshop in Dublin, Ireland. And that was unanimous enthusiasm. So then I started teaching. Every time I taught parts therapy for 2 days, I would teach the spiritual application of parts therapy, where you would call out a spiritual part the last 2 or 3 hours of the last afternoon of day 2. And eventually, I wrote a book on it, but it took years for that book to get written. The book is The Art of Spiritual Hypnosis, and it was co-authored by over 24 experienced hypnosis trainers and authors from around the globe. And some of those stories that I had the privilege to edit were so amazing that they literally made me cry tears. One mind-blowing session happened in my classroom. This was before The Art of Spiritual Hypnosis was written, but after that 1999 workshop where I finally brought it out of the closet, I also brought it out of the closet in the 3rd quarter of my course when I would teach parts therapy. And one of the ladies in the class one night, I think it was sometime either in 1999 or it might have been after the turn of the century, said, have you ever used hypnosis to help someone regain sight or hearing? And I said, no. Why do you ask? She said, well, I was blinded in my left eye as a toddler when my grandfather bounced me on his knee. And she said, the ophthalmologists say there's no medical reason for me not to be able to see, but she said for some reason the messages are not getting from my retina through the optic nerve into my brain. And she asked me if I would do a session. So knowing that she was very actively involved in her church, I guided her into hypnosis in front of the class and had her choose between a peaceful place or a sacred place and to imagine either an angel of healing or Jesus present. And she chose to invite Jesus into her peaceful place and imagine him touching her forehead above her left eye. So then while she was still in hypnosis, I had her imagine opening her left eye and covering her right eye with her hand and being able to see out of her left eye. And then I said, now imagine what it's like seeing out of both eyes. Then I said, now, while staying in deep hypnosis, when I count from 1 to 3, open both eyes. But meanwhile, put your left hand over your left eye and open your right eye. And I said, how many fingers? She said 2. I said, good. Now, remember what it was like seeing in your peaceful place. Close both eyes. Now, take your right hand and cover your right eye and open both eyes. Now how many fingers? And I had 4 fingers up. She said 4. I said, now close both eyes. Remember that when you opened your eyes, you were able to see my fingers. So in a few moments, I gave her some ego-strengthening suggestions, post-hypnotic suggestions, and said, when I get to the number 5 and you awaken, you'll come out of hypnosis, except that your right hand will cover your right eye until I touch your wrist. And I got a felt marker and wrote in great big letters, H-I, with an exclamation mark on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So when I counted from 1 to 5, she came up out of hypnosis. Her right hand was covering her right eye, and her left eye was open. She looked at the paper, smiled, and said, hi. Then I touched her wrist immediately. And one of the students said, you saw the paper? She said, yes. And she said, I need to go home now. I'll explain later. And she asked to be excused. She went home. A week later, at the start of the class, she said to the class she was sorry she left so abruptly. But she said, I knew if I didn't go home immediately, I would start crying and not be able to stop for 30 minutes or more. She said, when I got home and told my husband that I could see out of both eyes, we cried in each other's arms for 45 minutes. Then I had to do sessions the following 2 weeks in a row to help her overcome nausea for seeing in 3D for the first time in her conscious memory. I would call that a miracle of the mind. She had 20/20 vision immediately in a matter of a short 15-minute session. That, I think, is probably the most amazing session I've ever been privileged to facilitate. And then when she thanked me, I said, your faith made you whole. Thank Jesus. And of course she did. She was, what was another side story that was funny, she was in a church that was very skeptical of hypnosis, and she started doing Mistress of the Mind Tuesday night sessions at her home, saying, husbands, you can come along with your wives if you dare. And let me walk in your subconscious. It was funny, but she got a whole bunch of people in her church to become open-minded about hypnosis. And I'm sure she told them about regaining her eyesight in her left eye after having been blind since being a toddler in that eye. No one in the class knew she was blind in her left eye until she told us.
That's amazing. So I have a question for you. When you witness these results, how does it feel? It has to be more than just a physical sensation. Does your soul ignite? Does your heart, skip a beat? How does it feel as a person for you to watch a life transform in this miraculous way?
It's hard to describe by feelings with words, but it's like an incredible honor to be chosen. And sometimes I've literally had to go into a room alone and cry tears of gratitude. I'm amazed because I'm not without faults. All of us have our faults. As a client in hypnosis years ago said, the only man who was perfect got nailed for it 2,000 years ago. And that's spiritual hypnosis, I believe, has the potential to change the whole paradigm of healthcare before the end of the 21st century if more and more people learn how to help clients or patients access that part of the subconscious or inner mind which is most closely connected to his or her perception of God or Christ or Yahweh or divine light, divine love, Buddha. It doesn't matter what the belief is. I don't have a right to change someone's beliefs. Many times through the years when I've facilitated spiritual hypnosis, a client has accessed Yahweh.
I really love your authentic way of sharing and respecting, your client's world. I think that's one of the first things I had to learn as a hypnotherapist is how to respect everyone's model of the world. And I think you have done it so incredibly well. And the question I'd like to ask you is, like, this is really fascinating. This is, I can tell that you have story after story, success story after success story. The books, I'm definitely going to read them. So you're such a vault of knowledge and wisdom and heart. Where can people find you? How can people get a hold of you?
My website is www.royhunter.com, ROYHUNTER.com. And then I'm happy to respond to email. I do occasionally take phone calls, but oftentimes you'll get my voicemail because I spend a lot of time caregiving. So I do very few private sessions anymore at my office, which is between Seattle and Tacoma. However, occasionally I'll make myself available to do a session via the internet on Zoom or Skype, and that's something I'm willing to do. My books are available on my website, although the spiritual hypnosis book, The Art of Spiritual Hypnosis, if you live outside of the USA, you'll have to get that on Amazon.com. But you can buy any of my other books on my website. Also, if you're interested in experiencing spiritual hypnosis, I can do that either privately, or I am planning on making myself available for some group spiritual hypnosis sessions for people who wish to organize them. That's something that I've done for professionals, but not for the general public. In fact, professionally, I'm scheduled to give a workshop this month at Hypnothoughts Live on spiritual hypnosis. It's a full one-day workshop. I'm teaching hypnosis professionals how to facilitate spiritual hypnosis in a client-centered manner. For example, I do not have a right to project my beliefs into somebody else. I feel it's very important, both professionally and spiritually, to work within the client's spiritual belief system. So if a client's higher power is Jehovah or Yahweh, so be it. Oftentimes a higher power is wanted to be called higher self, spirit guide, Michael the Archangel, Christ, God, Goddess, I am who I am. And I think it's very important that it be the client's experience. I'm only the facilitator. My role is not to meddle or interfere. My role is to facilitate what is most important for the client's best good, and not to try to convert the client to my way of thinking.
That's really beautiful. I'm personally interested in taking that workshop, so maybe we can talk about this afterwards. So,
certainly.
Ladies and gentlemen, royhunter.com. Roy, thank you again for your time and sharing your expertise. This was absolutely awesome, and I'm sure everyone really enjoyed this show. And as always, leave a review, rate the show, subscribe and share so other people who need help can find it. And we'll talk next week. And until then, cheers.
Thank you.